Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I've got a fantastically bleak and disturbing short story for you. A Lovely Bunch of Coconuts by Charles Birkin. So this is a short story that was recommended to me by Robbo, one of my patrons, as the most disturbing thing he'd read. And I also read about the author, Charles Birkin, more recently in this collected pulp horror book by Justin Marriott. So it was a story I was keen to read. I did have a bit of trouble tracking it down because the Charles Birkin collection that it's in, so Birkin was a British writer of kind of short horror fiction and published a few collections over the years, most of which are now out of print. So Valancourt have reprinted a couple of books of his, but his other books are out of print, including the one that includes A Lovely Bunch of Coconuts. And it is quite expensive to pick up a second-hand copy of it, sadly. However, somebody or a couple of people actually did point out in the comments that that story is also available in this Dennis Wheatley edited volume, Shafts of Fear, which is a lot more affordable. So if you do want to read this story, and I definitely recommend it, this is the cheapest way to get hold of a copy as far as I'm aware. So let me tell you about the story, and I've literally just finished reading it, and it was fantastically disturbing and very, very bleak. And that's the kind of thing that Birkin, and it's the first story I've read by him, but that's the kind of thing he was known for writing very, very dark, short horror stories, often with a twist at the end, and that twist often making an already dark story even darker. And that's definitely something that happens in this case. So it's only a short story. It's only about 14 pages. It was originally published in 1964, and its setting is a concentration camp, so a Nazi concentration camp during the Second World War. And it follows a group of 5 Jewish prisoners there who are collected together by the Nazi guards, so by some of the Nazi officers, and are forced to take part in a strange competition, the prize of which is that they will get to work in the officers' mess and will therefore get access to scraps of food and things like that, which they can pass to their wives in the women's camp. I won't tell you any more about the story than that because it's a very short story and it will be easy to spoil, but it's very, very disturbing. And it reminded me a lot of an absolute classic short story, which is very well known, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, in that it is very much about the cruelty that we as humans can inflict on each other, particularly when we feel that we have the approval of society, of the state, to do that. And that clearly is something that people have reflected on looking back at Nazi Germany, is the fact that it awakened in many people a willingness to do unspeakable things because they felt that that they weren't going to be judged for doing them, and indeed were encouraged to do them by the state. And it occurred to me that this story came out in 1964, as I've said, so 19 years after the end of the Second World War, 19 years after the true horror of the concentration camps was really revealed and understood. And I think when you look back at the 60s and 70s in particular, that's really when we started seeing books and movies in a reasonable number that really examined the horrors of the Holocaust and really started to try and understand through art how something as terrible as that could have happened. So I think A Lovely Bunch of Coconuts definitely falls into that that kind of wave of cultural material, if you like, that reflected on the Holocaust. And it's interesting that that Birkin chooses to do it in the form of a short horror story. The way he does it fits very well. It's got the structure, it's definitely got the structure of that kind of story, and it's, dare I say, it's satisfying as a short story because of that. But it is incredibly bleak and incredibly horrible and very, very effective. And it is, I was surprised by how graphic it was for a story of that age. You don't think of things from the 60s as being particularly graphically violent, but some of the detail in this story is really, really horrific. So I compared it earlier on in this review to The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, and where I think it has the edge over The Lottery in terms of being disturbing is that whereas The Lottery is set in a recognisably fictional setting, so a setting that feels quite created by Jackson, this slightly strange, skewed version of US society. A Lovely Bunch of Coconuts is set in a place that was all too real. And that really does, make you as a reader reflect on the horrors of the Holocaust. So I hope you found that interesting. It's definitely left me keen to read more stuff by Charles Birkin. So if you've read him and have recommendations, please do let me know in the comments. But aside from that, I will leave it there and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.